Hello everybody, welcome to Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH, and this is Lecture 13, Standard Costing System and Variance Analysis. At the end of the video, you should be able to define Standard Costing System and explain its importance, calculate material, labor, and overhead variances, and interpret variances. This is your lecturer, Kevin Troy M. Chua. Before anything else, please like, share, and subscribe to Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH and hit the notification bell button to alert you of the latest video lessons. For all of your questions, comments, and suggestions, please put them down in the comment section below. And for webinar and speakership invites, please send me a message at kevintroy.chua1994@gmail.com. Thank you very much for your utmost support for Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH. And may these videos continue to help students in their online learning and academic development. May these videos continue to help teachers in enhancing their lesson plans and teaching methodologies. Thank you very much for trusting Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH as your online learning partner. Maraming salamat po. In the last lesson, we discussed process costing system, which is applicable on homogeneous products na dumadaan sa iba't ibang steps or processes depende sa kanilang nature. And now, we will be using another costing system that can be applied in the previous costing systems that we have discussed, which is what we call standard costing system. Now, our main academic resource that we need to use today is the Cost Accounting Foundations and Evolutions, 8th edition by Michael R. Kinney and Cecily A. Ryborn from Cengage Learning. So most of the discussions that we have here in our slides came from this textbook. So thank you, Professor Kinney and Professor Ryborn. Okay, so as I've mentioned, we'll be talking about standard costing system. Always remember that cost control leads to cost reduction, because if you are able to properly manage your cost, you can expect that you can reduce cost, because after all, yan naman po ang gusto nating mangyari, hindi ba? We have higher revenue, pero yung cost natin is the lowest possible. So, in order for us to reduce cost, we should practice cost control. Now, how can we do cost control? We can use standard costing system in order for us to monitor and to be able to manage costs accordingly. Now, standard costs are the scientifically predetermined cost of manufacturing a single unit or a number of units of product or of rendering a service during a specified future period. So, gumagamit po tayo ng standard cost. Tayo po ay nagsiset ng standards. These are scientifically predetermined, no? Dahil ito po yung parang gusto nating benchmark, no? Na dapat ang ating overhead ay ganito lamang, ang ating direct labor cost ay dapat ganito lamang, no? So, nagsaset po tayo ng standard costs para po maging pamantayan natin. Kaya nga po siya tinawag na standard cost. Now, take note of these two words that I have highlighted here. Number one, it's scientific, because pinag-aaralan mabuti ang pagsiset natin ng standard cost. Hindi po siya basta-basta yung, ito, yan ang amount na iset natin as a standard. Okay? So, hindi po ganon. Pinag-aaralan po lahat ng materials, lahat ng galaw ng labor, pati ng overhead. Kaya po siya scientifically predetermined. And coming from the word predetermined, dinedetermine bago ang production process. Okay? It's predetermined, 'di ba? Parang yung application natin ng predetermined overhead rate, 'di ba? Kinukuha muna natin yung predetermined overhead rate bago i-apply sa production. So ganun din po yung standard cost. It's predetermined, so that is the standard cost na i-apply natin during the production process. Okay? So it's scientifically predetermined, and we will be talking about why is it scientific. Okay, so depending on these three costing systems, we have actual costing versus normal costing versus standard costing. As you all know, in actual costing system, lahat po ng actual cost ang nire-record natin. Actual materials, actual labor, and actual overhead. And the only difference ng actual costing sa normal costing is that ang ginagamit po natin sa overhead is our predetermined overhead rates. Kaya po actual materials, actual labor, Pero applied overhead po tayo pagdating sa overhead. Now, with the use of standard costing system, lahat po ay standard cost ang ginagamit natin. Standard materials, standard labor, standard overhead. Tapos, adjust na lang po tayo sa dulo nung mga tinatawag nating variances. And we will be talking about that later. Okay, so no single standard costing is appropriate for all situations. Depende sa product, depende sa industry, pag-aaralang mabuti kung ano ang standard cost ng isang product at ng isang industry. Hindi po pwedeng kung ano yung standard cost nila ay yun din ang standard cost mo. At hindi rin naman pwede na porket sila ay ice cream manufacturing company, yun din ang magiging gagamitin mo, no, na standard cost. Hindi po standardized ang paggamit natin ng standard costing. Ang gulo, no? Hindi po standardized ang paggamit natin ng standard costing. It's just that wala pong one shoe fits all na standard cost dahil on your own product and in your own industry, ikaw mismo ang mag-aaral sa sarili mong entity ano ba ang standard costs ng aking operations. Okay? So there is no single standard costing that is appropriate for all of the situations. And even inside the entity, lalo na't may bago kang product line, another standard costing na pag-aaralan mong mabuti. Okay, so let's talk about the development of a standard cost system. Paano po ba nagde-develop ng standards? The primary objective in manufacturing a product is to minimize unit cost while achieving certain quality specifications. Actually, sometimes it's hard because we want to minimize cost, but we have to achieve a certain level of quality. And as we know, sometimes quality comes with a high price, right? So basically, the objective of an entity is to balance that they have minimized costs and at the same time they achieve certain quality specifications. Almost all products can be manufactured from a variety of alternative inputs that would generate the similar output and output quality. So, talagang kailangan pag-aralan mabuti ng isang company because iba-iba po yung inputs na pwede nating gamitin na pareho lang naman ang maibibigay sa atin. But the thing is, ano kaya doon sa mga alternatives natin yung pinaka-mura? Okay? So, kailangan pag-aralan talaga. So, we will be going back to the perspective that it should really be scientifically, no, na mapag-aralan para malaman natin yung tamang standard costs. Okay. Who develops standards? Pwedeng cost accounting department, also from industrial engineering, and with human resources, data processing, purchasing, and management. Kasi lahat nitong mga departments na ito or lahat nitong mga areas na ito ay we work hand in hand with them, no, in manufacturing the products. Okay? We work hand in hand kasi they all have the data na kailangan natin sa pagsaset ng ating mga standards. Okay? After the desired output quality and input resources have been determined, the cost and quantity standards can be developed. So, hindi lamang po cost accounting department lang ang aasahan nating magawa ng standard costs. It's actually the work of them all together in order for us to develop ang ating ine-expect na mga standards. Okay? Now, let's talk about setting up production standards, and the first thing that we need to talk about is materials. The first step in developing material standards is identify and list the specific direct materials to manufacture the product. Ano po bang gagamitin nating materyales dito sa ating product? So, syempre, we need to identify and list all of the materials that we use to manufacture the product. Now, is there a product specification document? Meron po bang document na nagsispecify kung ano po yung materials na kailangan talagang gamitin sa kanya? So, if yes, wala kang problema, you use the product specification document because it will give you the information that you need. However, if you don't have a product specification document at the time that you are studying for material standards, what you should do is to determine the material specifications by observing the production area and you ask some product personnel working on the product. You also inspect material requisitions and reviewing product-related cost accounts. Lalo na po kung very startup pa lang yung company, syempre talaga nag-uumpisa pa lang yan, wala pang product specification document. Lalo na parang nagma-manufacture na sila pero wala pang formal product specification document. So, kapag ka po pinag-aaralan nila yung kanilang standard cost, ayan po, they need to observe, they need to inquire, they need to inspect, and review yung ating mga records din naman para makapag-develop ng standards. Now, 4 things must be known about material inputs and standards development. In developing standards for materials, unang kailangan mong tignan is syempre, ano yung type ng materials na gagamitin or ginagamit natin sa product natin. Also, yung quality ng materials and also quantity, gaano karami and magkano mo siya binibili, no? Price per unit. So, pag sinabing price, yun yung cost na sa atin, magkano natin siya binili. Okay? Now, for quality decisions, it's important to really think about that because managers should remember na habang tumataas ang material grade or yung ine-expect nating quality, tumataas yung presyo. Okay? So, ang goal ng company is ma-achieve yung quality na gusto nila in the product without having to go too much on the price. Okay? Kasi ang gusto rin naman nating mangyari is cost reduction, minimized cost. Okay? Now, when converting quantities into cost, companies should also make allowance for normal ways of components. So, wala pong perfect na manufacturing cycle. So, but at least we should minimize that actually, no? But in setting our standards, dapat po ay naglalagay rin naman po tayo ng allowances sa mga pangyayari na minsan merong hindi inaasahan nagkakaroon ng normal wastage. So, kailangan din pong i-allow na magkaroon ng ganyang component. Okay, when all quantity and price information is available, component quantities are multiplied by unit prices to obtain each component's total cost. So, parang magkakaroon ka ng standard material amount, no? Or the standard amount of direct materials in this product. Parang ganun po siya. These totals are summed to determine the total standard material cost for 1 unit of product. Later po, i-discuss natin anong document or sang document nyo po makikita yung standard na cost ng materials. Okay, so tapos na tayo mag-usap about materials and let's go to labor. Labor standards. Okay, each production operation performed by workers or by machinery should be identified. Kumbaga, sa production floor, ano po ba talagang ginagawa ng mga tao, 'di ba? Para matapos yung produkto. In specifying operations and movements, activities such as clean up, setup, and rework are also considered. Again, hindi po perfect ang production process and talagang normal naman na nangyayari 'to, 'di ba? May setting up, may cleaning up, and at times there are rework na nangyayari. So, we will be allowing also for that. In the development of effective labor standards, saan daw po natin makukuha yung ating information na ano ba talaga yung standard rate ng labor? Pwedeng industrial engineering techniques, tanong tayo sa kanila, okay? Or di po kaya in-house time and motion studies, i-observe ka kung paano nyo talaga ginagawa real time, no? Yung parang research and motion project, okay? And then yung ating, syempre, historical data. Pwede rin po nating balikan, no? And you will really see a pattern or a trend, no? Na pwede mong gamitin as the standard number of hours, standard amount of labor na ginagamit natin in your production process. Now, there is a disadvantage sa paggamit po ng research and motion studies or in-house time and motion studies. Pansinin niyo yung picture, 'di ba? Ino-observe yung trabahador kung paano niya ginagawa yung trabaho at ilang oras yung ginugugol niya dun sa trabahong 'yon, no? And ano yung mga processes na pinagdadaanan ng product, no? So, pinag-aaralan talaga mabuti. Now, the disadvantage kapag ka ang isang empleyado ay monitored sa ganitong sitwasyon, it may result in employees engaging in slowdown tactics when they are being monitored. Pwedeng sinasadya, pwedeng hindi sinasadya. Pag sinabing slowdown tactics na sinasadya, ay sasadyain kong medyo bagalan para ang malaman ng company ganito talaga kahabang oras yung ginugugol ko dito sa produktong to. So in time, so ang nangyayari kapag ka normal operations, dahil yung standard niya ay ganung kahaba, pwede siyang mag-relax ng konti sa trabaho, 'di ba? Kapag ka actual operations. So, hindi po kaya pwede niyang i-normalize yung productivity or bilis niya sa trabaho. Pero ang magiging report sa kanya is, uy, itong empleyadong to efficient to kasi ang ang standard natin, ang expectation natin is makagawa siya ng 3 units per hour. Pero ang nagagawa niya, 5 units per hour. Hindi mo alam, nag-slow down tactics siya nung time na minomonitor mo siya. Kaya akala mo, nung kinompare mo na with the standards na set up nyo, akala nyo ang bilis-bilis niya. But in reality, yun naman pala ang totoo. Okay? So, meron din naman po tayong slowdown na hindi sinasadya. Kasi syempre, ino-observe mo siya So, medyo mabagal siya dahil ino-observe siya, make sure niya na talagang tama lahat ng ginagawa niya. So, bumabagal din siya. Okay? So, that's the disadvantage of research and motion projects. Okay? So, the perfect thing siguro na gawin sa research and motion studies is pwedeng surprise visit. Ayan, no? Para hindi alam ng empleyado. Kaya normal lang, no? Wag niyong paalam na nag-time motion studies kayo. Ikot-ikot lang si production supervisor sa floor, no? Para at least yung katotohanan ang makikita natin sa mga tao. Okay? Now, labor rate standards should reflect yung kanilang wages and syempre pati po yung mga ibibigay nating fringe benefits, social security contributions, and withholding taxes. Dahil kasama po talaga yan sa ating payroll cost, di ba? Kung babalik po kayo sa accounting for labor, pinag-aralan po natin yan. When time and rate information are available, job task times are multiplied by wage rates to generate the total cost of each operation. So, ganun din po, ito total natin lahat yan and etong produktong to, ito ang total labor cost na standard cost niya. Ganun lang. Okay? So, we're done talking about labor and let's move on to overhead. Actually, sa overhead, wala naman tayong ganong pag-uusapan dito dahil alam nyo na to, no? Overhead standards reflect the company's predetermined manufacturing overhead rates. O yun, yung pinag-aralan natin predetermined overhead rates, yun po yung ginagamit natin sa standard costing. The most appropriate costing information will result when overhead is assigned to separate cost pools based on cost drivers and when overhead allocations are made using different activity drivers. Sounds familiar? Hindi po ba yan ay activity-based costing system? Ibig sabihin po kasi, 'di ba, ang activity-based costing system talagang very detailed sa lahat ng related overhead dun sa ating mga products, no? So, in setting up overhead standards, napakaganda po na gumamit tayo ng activity-based costing system kasi it's very detailed, no? Unlike sa paggamit po natin ng plant-wide or sa departmental rates, 'di ba? Talagang sa activity-based costing kita natin lahat, no? So, that's our overhead standard. So, di ba? Wala man tayong ganong pag-uusapan dyan. Okay. Let's continue. So, meron po tayong tinatawag na document na standard cost card. Yan po yun, no? Kunyari, kung titignan nyo yung standard cost card, pinag-aralan, yan po lahat ng components na kailangan para dito sa mountain bike product number 15 na ito, di ba? So, kailangan nila ng component WF05, kung ano man yan, WR05, and then, nandun po yung unit cost at yung total cost. So, the standard direct materials for that mountain bike is $380. Pinag-aralan din po kung ano yung mga kailangang pagdaanan ng ating mountain bike. So, painting, assembling, oiling, testing, packaging, and then, kung ilang hours po in each of the activity at kung magkano po yung binabayad natin sa empleyado for that. So, the total cost of standard cost rather for direct labor is $131. And then, ayan po, depende sa company kung ano yung kanilang costing system sa pagkuha ng manufacturing overhead na standard cost or the predetermined overhead rate. So, pag pinag-add po natin yung materials, labor, and overhead, yun po yung total standard cost for each unit of the product. Okay? So, syempre, ang makikita po natin sa standard cost card is talagang nakaspecify po yung direct materials, direct labor, and overhead components niya. Pero, standard costs po yan. Okay. Now, one of the major purpose of using a standard cost system is to aid management in controlling the cost of production. So, magkakaroon po kasi tayo ng comparison actual versus standard. Mas mataas ba ang actual ko kesa sa standard na sinet o mas mababa ang actual ko kesa sa standard na sinet? Standards enable management to make periodic comparisons, kasasabi ko lang, of actual results with planned results. And the difference between them is called variance. Variance analysis is a technique that can be used by management to measure performance, correct inefficiencies, and deal with the accountability function. Okay, so papakita ko po sa inyo ngayon ang mga gagamitin nating formula for variance analysis. Okay, let's talk about first material variances. We have material price variance and material quantity variance. Paano po kinukuha yan? Ganito po. AP or actual price nung binili natin yung product multiplied by the actual quantity purchased. Okay? And then, i-compare po natin siya sa standard price, pero still at actual quantity. Our similarity here is yung ating actual quantity. Ang magkaiba is, i-compare natin yung price. So, dahil ang i-compare natin dito ay price, ang tawag po dito ay material price variance as to purchase. Okay? Now, i-compare naman po natin sa standard price at actual quantity ang standard price at standard quantity at the point of usage naman. Usage naman to. Kasi syempre, production process na to So, yung ginamit naman natin na quantity. Okay? So, ang kanilang similarity here is the standard price, pero ilan yung ginamit mong quantity during production. Kaya ang tawag po dyan ay material quantity variance at the point of usage. So, sa material price variance at the point of purchase, kasi price yung pinag-uusapan, and then sa material quantity variance at the point of production or at the point of usage. Pag pinag-add nyo po yung dalawa, ang tawag po dyan ay total material variance. Sa atin naman po labor variances, we have the labor rate variance and the labor efficiency variance. Ganito naman po yan. Actual rate ng labor at actual hours compared with standard rate at actual hours. The similarity is actual hours being compared with the actual rate and the standard rate. Since we are comparing rate, this is labor rate variance. Now, we compare standard rate at actual hours with standard rate at standard hours. Our similarity is the standard rate and we are comparing the number of hours naman na nilagay or ginamit or ginawa yung produkto. Ang tawag naman po dyan ay labor efficiency variance. Efficient ka bang magtrabaho versus the standard na sinet ng company. Labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance is total labor variance. For overhead variances, mag-usapan muna natin yung variable overhead. So, spending variance or the variable overhead spending variance and the variable overhead efficiency variance. Okay. For fixed overhead naman is fixed overhead spending variance and fixed overhead volume variance. Ang tawag po sa variance analysis natin ng overhead na naka-breakdown into variable and fixed is the four-way overhead variance. So, pag-usapan natin muna variable and then susunod yung fixed. Okay, so, actual variable overhead compared with a variable overhead rate multiplied by actual quantity. Pag sinabing actual quantity, depende po kasi, 'di ba, ang overhead pwedeng sa quantity ng materials, pwedeng sa direct labor hours, pwedeng sa machine hours. So yung ginagamit po nating word na quantity dito, marami siyang pwedeng maging ibig sabihin depende sa overhead application ng isang company, which is as I've mentioned, pwedeng machine hours, pwedeng materials, pwedeng direct labor hours, or baka mismong number of units ng product. Depende, no? So, pero ang ginamit na lang natin collectively here is quantity. Pero depende sa problem kung ano yung quantity na yan. Baka yung quantity na yan is number of hours sa lahat ng products mo. So, depende po yan. Okay? And then, yan po ay i-compare natin with each other, which is actual to actual naman po talaga yan, di ba? Kasi ito is actual overhead, pero so naka-actual rate to at actual quantity. Ito naka-actual quantity, pero yung mismong standard rate mo. So ang tawag mo sa kanya is variable overhead spending variance. And then you also compare it with the variable overhead rate, talagang at standard na, no? Variable overhead rate times standard quantity, ang tawag naman po natin dyan ay efficiency variance. Kasi po, parehong at standard rate or variable overhead rate, pero chinecheck mo chinecheck mo actual quantity versus standard quantity. Kaya efficiency naman po yung chinecheck natin dyan. Sa fixed overhead naman po, mas madali. Actual fixed overhead versus budgeted fixed overhead. Yan po yung ating fixed overhead spending variance. And then budgeted fixed overhead versus standard fixed overhead. Yan naman po yung fixed overhead volume variance. Okay. Meron din naman po tayong tinatawag na three-way overhead variance, pero ang atin pong perspective sa kanya is by total. Okay? Totals na po siya. So, actual variable overhead plus actual fixed overhead or total actual overhead compared with actual quantity times variable overhead rate plus budgeted fixed overhead. Okay? Ang tawag po dyan ay spending variance. We will be comparing it with standard quantity multiplied by variable overhead rate plus budgeted fixed overhead, yan naman po ay efficiency variance. Okay? And then, i-compare po uli natin siya sa variable overhead rate at standard quantity at saka fixed overhead rate at standard quantity, volume variance naman po yung difference nung dalawa. Okay? So, yan po yung tinatawag nating three-way overhead variance. Meron din po tayong two-way overhead variance na tatanggalin lang natin yung isang component. So, ang kino-compare na natin is yung actual versus yung standard quantity ng variable overhead rate pero budgeted fixed overhead. Budget variance po ang tawag dyan. Bakit? Bakit budget variance? Kasi ito po ay budgeted, ito ay actual. Okay? And then volume variance naman po is yun pa rin, yung parang kanina sa three-way. And then syempre meron po tayong one-way, actual to standard, di ba? Actual, standard. So, actual overhead versus standard overhead. Yan po yung total overhead variance, which is, yan po yung pinag-aaralan natin noon pang-una na over-applied or under-applied overhead. Yan po yun. Okay? So, baka sinusulat nyo pa isa-isa. Si Sir Chua ay binigyan na kayo ng cheat sheet. Ayan, di ba? Napakaganda. Binigyan ko na po kayo ng ganyan. Screenshot nyo po yan. Kung kayo po ay naka-laptop naman or PC ay ang tawag doon, print screen. Ayun. I-print screen nyo na yan. Pero kung kayo ay masipag na estudyante at ayaw nyong nag-i-screenshot lang, sige, kopyahin nyo yan. Walang problema. Pero yan na yung ating cheat sheet. Nandyan na lahat yan. Materials, labor, overhead na 4-way, 3-way, 2-way, and 1-way. Cheat sheet para mag-review, pero hindi siya cheat sheet para sa exam. Okay? Gagamitin nyo yan sa review. Pero, yan po ay dapat kabisado nyo. Hoy, nung college ako, kinabisado ko yan ha. So, dapat kayo din. Okay, kabisaduhin nyo yan. At saka, wala po tayong formula card sa CPA board exam. So, kakabisaduhin nyo po talaga yan for the CPA board exam. Okay? Wala pong formula card doon, ha? Huwag kayo umasa ng ganun. Walang ganun sa board exam. Okay? At para ma-i-apply na po natin yung ating mga pinagsasabi doon sa ating mga formula, tayo po ay mag-sample problem. Okay. Jim and Company has the following standards for 1 unit of product. So, sinabi naman na po sa ating problem na ito po yung standards. So, dun daw po sa paggawa ng produkto nila, ang materials daw po na ginagamit is kada 1 unit is 80 pounds at $6 per pound. And then, 3 hours daw po siyang ginagawa at $16 per hour. Now, the variable overhead is being applied at 1.5 machine hours. na $50 per hour, and yung fixed overhead naman daw po natin is at the same 1.5 machine hours at $30 per hour. The predetermined overhead rates daw po na nandyan sa ating standards were developed using a practical capacity na 6,000 units per year. So kung iisipin mo, 6,000 units divided by 12 months, 500 units yung ating practical capacity per month. Production is assumed to occur evenly throughout the year. During the month, the company produced 525 units. The actual data given to you are as follows. So, direct materials purchased and used. So, hindi ko na kayo pinahirapan kung ano yung pinurchase, yun na rin yung ginamit. Okay? Pero kapag kayong problem nyo, magkaiba yung pinurchase sa ginamit, ang material price variance nyo ay based on purchases, tapos ang material quantity variance nyo is based sa ginamit. Okay? Pero ang binili at ginamit is 43,020 pounds. Okay? Then the total labor cost is 24,955. Then 1,550 hours para daw po dun sa lahat ng 525 units. Actual variable overhead is $43,750 and fixed overhead naman po na actual is $22,800. Both po ay 800 machine hours ang ginamit. Let's prepare a variance analysis report of materials, labor, and overhead. Okay. So, like nung ginawa po natin sa process costing, please, pakikopya itong problem na ito o hindi po kaya ay screenshot nyo po siya sa phone o hindi po kaya ay i-print screen nyo po sa inyong laptop or PC. And then, habang ginagawa po natin yung problem, kailangan nakikita nyo rin po itong problem na ito para guided po kayo sa mga pagsasasabi ko mamaya na mga calculations. Okay? So, make sure po na meron po kayong copy na nakikita nitong Jimin company na ito. Okay? Sige po, let's start with material variance. Compute na po natin yung ating material variances like this. Ayan. Lagay po natin sa actual price yung talagang actual price na $5.92 per unit. Tapos, multiply natin sa actual quantity na 43,020 pounds. Tapos, ang ating standard price po is, syempre, titingin ka dun sa bandang taas ng problem, magkano daw ba talaga yung standard price kada isang material. So, ang standard natin, $6. But still, you will be multiplying it to the actual quantity for that period na 43,020 pounds. Okay? And then, the standard price of $6 will be multiplied to the standard quantity. And how do we get the standard quantity? Di ba ang sabi po sa problem, ang isang unit daw po will have or will require 80 pounds. Yan daw po yung standard, no? Ilang units ba yung ginawa natin ngayong period? 525 units. So, if you multiply both of them, ang lalabas po is 42,000 pounds po yung standard quantity natin at 525 units ng production. So, syempre, una nyong gagawin dyan is this one. You will be getting the products of all of the components of your variances. And then, hindi ko na isa-isayin yung amount, i-multiply nyo lang naman yan, no? And then get the variances. Ayan. So, our first variance is 3,441.6 and then our next variance is 6,120. Okay. Sir, paano po namin malalaman kung favorable or unfavorable for the company yung variance? Hindi po ako maglalagay ng positive or negative sign, ha. Ayoko po kasi kayong matuto ng kabisote style, no? Kaya hindi ko siya lalagyan ng positive or negative. Gusto ko tignan nyo sa mismong pangyayari dun sa company kung favorable or unfavorable yung nangyayari. Okay? So, check natin. Nabili mo yung product at $5.92, pero ang standard ay $6. Nakabili ka ng mas mura. So, yung 3,441.6 mo ay favorable variance. Kaso, ang standard natin ay 42,000 pounds lang. Bakit ka sumobra at naging 43,020 pounds yung nagamit mo? Sobra ka, ibig sabihin, yung 6,120 mo, unfavorable. So, yun po yung ating judgment. Favorable po ang ating material price variance dahil nakamura po tayo. Dapat $6, nabili mo lang ng 5.92. Yun nga lang, 42,000 pounds ang dapat mo lang gamitin. Bakit ka sumobra? ng 43,020 pounds. So, unfavorable po yung ating material quantity variance. Again, hindi ko po kayo tuturuan ng kabisote style na pag positive o favorable or unfavorable, pag negative, favorable, unfavorable. Okay? Hindi ko kayo tuturuan ng ganon. I want you to learn it based here on what's happening with the company. Okay? Para pag balik-balik ta rin man yung problem na anumang problem na sasagutan nyo, alam nyo i-judge. Okay? Total judgmental ka naman. Joke lang. Okay. Next po is labor. Sa labor naman po, ganito gagawin natin, mga kapatid. Actually, yung actual rate times actual hours, binigay na po sa atin sa problem, di ba? Yun po yung 24,955. But for purposes of discussion, papakita pa rin natin. So, kung yung total kasi niya na actual is 24,955, divide mo sa 1,550 hours na actual hours na ginamit. Ang naging actual rate natin was $16.10. So, pakita lang natin formally, multiply natin uli sa 1,550 hours na actual. Then, ang standard rate natin is $16 per hour sa lahat ng 1,550 hours. But the standard hours for the process is, ang isang product daw po or isang unit ng company is kailangan gawin for 3 hours. So, 525 units times 3 hours standard hours, 1,575 hours yung standard natin. Okay? So, get the products po uli at tapos get the variances. O ano po kayang ibig sabihin nitong 155 tsaka 400 na to? O tignan nyo mabuti. Ang standard rate natin ay 16. Ang binayad mo sa mga empleyado, 16.10. Mas mataas. Ibig sabihin, yung 155 natin, unfavorable. Pero, 1,575 daw ang standard hours para gawin mo lahat tong 525 units. Aba, medyo mabilis kang nakapagtrabaho. 1,550 hours lang. Kaya yung $400 mo, favorable. So, we have an unfavorable labor rate variance dahil mas mataas yung binayad mo sa mga empleyado. Pero, mas mabilis silang nakapagtrabaho. Kaya po yung kanilang labor efficiency variance ay favorable. I hope naiintindihan nyo po kung paano mag-judge kung favorable or unfavorable. Let's proceed with your overhead variances. Ayan, dito kayo medyo kailangan kumapit ng konti. Okay? So, start tayo with the four-way. Okay? So, pag four-way po, unahin natin si variable. Ang pinakamadaling ilista yung actual variable overhead kasi nasa problem na, tingin kayo sa bandang baba, 43,750. Okay? Now, bumultiply naman po natin sa variable overhead rate, which is pag tumingin ka sa bandang taas, the variable overhead rate is $50. Right? And then, ang ating pong actual quantity po kasi talaga yung ginagamit sa formula. Pero 'di ba? Sabi ko nga sa inyo, depende kung paano nila ina-apply, 'di ba? Which is 800 machine hours po. Yung ating machine hours na actual quantity. Saan nyo po makikita yan? Tingin kayo sa bandang baba, 800 machine hours. Okay? And then, paano naman po sa standard natin? So, syempre, ganun pa rin po, $50. Pero, paano kunin yung standard quantity? 1.5 machine hours daw po ang kailangan sa isang product. Yan po yung standard. Multiply nyo sa units na produce natin, 525 units. So, ang ating machine hours daw po, sa lahat ng 525 units, ang standard is 787.5 machine hours. Okay? So, you get the products of all of them. So, we have 40,000 for this area and then 39,375 and then get the variances. O, paano natin siya i-judge? O, pakita ko na. Bakit siya parehong unfavorable? Tingnan nyong mabuti. Ang actual mo, 43,750. Pero if you will be using the actual quantity at the standard rate of $50, 40,000 lang pala dapat. Sumobra ka ng gasto sa overhead, unfavorable. Variable overhead, spending variance. Abay, lalo na dito. Dapat pala at pure standard, 39,375. no? Pero ang ginastos mo hindi ginastos. Pero nung kinompare na natin siya at actual quantity, 40,000. What brought about na unfavorable siya? Kasi ang machine hours na standard lamang po for all 525 units is 787.5 machine hours. Bakit ka sumobra up to 800 machine hours? Hindi ka efficient. Kaya unfavorable po ang ating variable overhead efficiency variance. Okay, let's talk about naman po yung ating fixed na overhead. Okay. Ang actual fixed overhead po natin, yun lang din po yung nakalista, 22,800. Paano naman po yung ating budgeted fixed overhead? Pag budgeted fixed overhead, syempre nakadepende tayo sa nakabudget during the year, which is 6,000 units per year ang practical capacity divided by 12 months. That's 500 units per month na ating binudget multiplied by 1.5 machine hours required per each of the product and then multiply by $30 na fixed overhead rate. Okay? So that is 22,500. Pag standard naman po, syempre yung mismong 525 units at 1.5 machine hours at $30 per machine hour. So 23,625. So yan na po yun, sila na po yun. At yan na po yung kukuhanan nyo ng variances. Ngayon, actual 22,800, binudget mo lang 22,500. So ikaw ay unfavorable sa spending, pero ikaw ay favorable as to volume. Okay? Favorable ka as to volume kasi mas maliit yung nakabudget. Okay? Kasi ito yung ang standard mo ina-expect 23,625. Tapos ang nakabudget is 22,500, no? Bakit kaya volume? Kasi it's based on the volume mismo, no? Kasi ang standard is up to 525 units per year per month eh. Tapos 1.5 machine hours. Pero yung naka-budget is 500 times 1.5. Okay? So it's based on the volume kasi na naka-budget. Okay? So you have a favorable volume variance. Okay. Three-way naman tayo. Pag three-way, ganito po gagawin natin. So pag-a-add nyo lang po si actual variable overhead at si actual fixed overhead. And then, yung actual pong machine hours natin, multiply natin sa variable overhead rate. Pero nakuha na po natin kanina tong budgeted fixed overhead. So, kunin nyo lang po yon. And then, 525 units times 1.5 hours, machine hours po, which is ito yung actual natin multiplied by the standard rate standard number ng machine hours. Yung parang kanina lang din, times $50, pero i-add po natin si budgeted fixed overhead. Sa three-way overhead variance na po lalabas yung pinaka-ilalim, no? Which is talagang lahat naka-standard. 525 units, 1.5 machine hours at $50, at saka 525 units, 1.5 machine hours na $30 naman na rate ng fixed overhead na standard. Okay? So, get the total of everything and let's try to judge them. Ito po yung magiging variances niya. Okay. So, tingnan natin mabuti. 66,550 actual versus nakabudget na 62,500. Yung 4,050 mo ay unfavorable. 62,500 versus 61,875 na nakabudget as to standard. 625 mo, unfavorable pa rin. Pero 61,875 na ang standard na ine-expect natin, 63,000 pa, 1,125, volume variance, favorable. Okay? So, mamaya makakakita kayo ng similarities, but parang pare-pareho lang, sir, yung mga words, spending and efficiency. Okay? Okay, so, yun po yun. Sir, bakit ito tinawag na efficiency variance? Tingnan mo mabuti. Nung minultiply natin kanina yung 525 units at 1.5 machine hours, ilan nga po uli na machine hours? Diba 787.5 machine hours? Kaso ang actual machine hours mo, 800 machine hours. Hindi ka efficient. Okay? As to machine hours. Kasi 787.5 lang. Bakit 800 machine hours ka? So, hindi ka naging efficient. Okay? Yun po. Pag two-way naman po, tatanggalin nyo lang yung isang component dun sa gitna kanina. Okay? So, dediretso na ako sa calculations and sa variances. Okay. Favorable o unfavorable? Yun pa rin naman po yung kanina sa three-way. So, yung volume variance natin magfe-favorable talaga. Pero, yung naka-budget natin at standard na 61,875, i-compare mo sa actual na 66,550. So, malaki talaga yung nagastos mo sa sa actual overhead. Kaya yung 4,675 mo ay unfavorable budget variance. At syempre, kapag ka naman po one-way overhead variance, yan yung pinakamadali, actual versus standard po yan. So, kung ano yung actual at kung ano yung standard. Okay? So, this is your standard, this is your actual, this is your standard. Tapos, ito po yung variance nila, 3,550. Gamitin natin yung word na mas sanay kayo nung nag-overhead variance tayo ng mga unang lesson. Your actual overhead is 66,550. Your applied overhead is 63,000. Sounds familiar? Di ba ganun po yun? So, yung 3,550 mo ay under-applied variance. Bakit under-applied? Ang in-apply natin ay 63,000 lang. Ang actual overhead ay 66,550. Mas mataas ang actual kesa sa applied. So, under-applied siya. For variance analysis purposes, siya po ay unfavorable dahil ang standard po natin ay 63,000 pero ang ginastos mo sa overhead na actual is 66,550. But in our previous lessons, yung ginagamit natin na actual yung ginagamit natin na over-applied, under-applied, siya naman po ay under-applied variance. Okay? Sige po. Now, let's do a reconciliation of all of your overhead variances. So, ililista natin lahat ng overhead variance dito. May papakita ko sa inyo. Okay. So, sa four-way, ganito po lahat. Variable overhead spending and efficiency variance at saka fixed overhead spending and volume variance. For a total overhead variance of 3,550, unfavorable. Pag pinag-add nyo po yung dalawang spending variance, yan po yung total spending variance which is 4,050 unfavorable. At pag pinag-add naman po natin si spending variance and efficiency variance ng variable overhead at saka spending variance ng fixed overhead, yan po yung budget variance. Okay, check natin ngayon sa three-way. Sa three-way, kung mapapansin nyo, the total spending variance of 4,050, ito po yun. Okay? And then, sa efficiency naman po is 625, ito po yun. Yung variable overhead efficiency, ito po yun. And then, yung volume variance pa rin po natin is 1125 favorable. Three-way po natin is 3550 unfavorable pa din. Pagtingin natin sa two-way ngayon, ito po yung total budget variance natin na 4,675. Ito po yung 4,675. Then, ito po yung volume variance natin. At two-way, 3,550 unfavorable pa din. And then, syempre, sa one-way po natin, under-applied overhead, which is 3,550 unfavorable. So, you know if your variance analysis as to overhead is correct when pagbalik-balik rin mo man ang sitwasyon, four-way, three-way, two-way, one-way. Pare-pareho ka dapat ng total overhead variance na 3,550 unfavorable. Ang aking pong suggestion sa inyo ay yung problem po, ulitin nyo on your own. Kabisaduhin ang formulas na binigay ko sa inyo. Pag-aralan mabuti kung paano mag-judge kung favorable or unfavorable. And then yung binigay pong problem sa inyo, ulitin nyo po uli. Dapat lalabas po kayo sa mga variances na diniscuss natin sa araw na ito. Thank you very much for listening and ito na po. Thank you very much for watching all of our videos for cost accounting and control. This is our last lesson for cost accounting and control. And in the future, I hope to still give you some more lessons about accounting. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng suporta ninyo sa Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH. And thank you very much po sa inyong pagsubaybay mula Lecture 1 hanggang Lecture 13 dito po sa cost accounting and control. And I hope that you all had a great semester and this this has been recorded at the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I hope na lahat po ng estudyante na nasa online learning ngayon ay sana po naging malaking tulong po sa inyo ang Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH. Okay? And for the last time for this lesson, again, please like, share, and subscribe to Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH and hit the notification bell button to alert you of the latest video lessons. For all of your questions, comments, and suggestions, please put them down in the comment section below. And for webinar and speakership invites, please send me a message at kevintroy.chua1994@gmail.com. This has been Sir Chua's Accounting Lessons PH College Edition, and this has been Cost Accounting and Control. To God be all the glory, honor, and praise. Thank you very much for your support for this channel, and I hope to give you more lessons in the future. Thank you and have a great day. Reach for your dreams. Sarangeo.